Hey guys, we weren't planning to do a Facebook Live, but part of our grant with Blue Cross Blue Shield does want us to push out these messages through social media, and we hosted a free parenting class today, just got finished with it, and it's a really tricky time of day to go to a parenting class. So we had some people here, but wanted to make sure that the general message that we covered could be pushed out and shared with people who maybe would have wanted to attend but weren't able to attend. Today's topic was the teenage brain. It has been pointed out to me that when I hold things up to the camera, it flips the words. So the book I'm holding up that we talked about, kind of a summary a little bit today, is called The Teenage Brain. It's written by Frances E. Jensen. It's a fabulous book to help us understand the neuroscience of the teenage brain. And you're going to want to study and learn a little bit about your teenager's brain if you want to understand some of the chaos you're experiencing while parenting them. A couple of things that you may be noticing is it might feel like your young person really isn't concerned about the consequences or able to assess the risk of the choices they're making. And that's actually true. It is supported by the brain research. They are much more designed to seek reward than to assess for risk or danger. And that can range anywhere from really risky, possibly dangerous behaviors that they might participate in, to other things like talking back or being rude because they're looking for the laugh. They're really hunting for the next dopamine surge. And that reward system is strongly in place for them. Reward, reward, reward. They want that dopamine to just be washed over their brain. And while that can be challenging, it's also exciting, because one thing we know about when dopamine does give a little boost to things is that it promotes learning and it imprints the experience. So when we have this dopamine rush or this dopamine surge, when we're learning healthy, helpful, exciting, important things, then we're imprinting really great things on, or young people are having great things imprinted. When that dopamine is being blasted for dangerous, reckless, even behaviors that could kind of be get them on a trajectory that's more challenging, then again, their brain's actually learning that too. And so one of the things that we know is that addiction is actually a form of learning, over-learning, where the dopamine has been so intense and has imprinted so strongly on those dangerous behaviors that it becomes very challenging to break free from them. Not impossible, but a little more challenging. So we talked about some of those things regarding the teenage brain. The teenage brain is going to be operating from a optimal choice for behaviors. So they're not bringing their best game yet. That frontal lobe, to make logical, reasonable decisions, that frontal lobe needs to be strongly connected to the right and left hemisphere, so that when we're dealing with different situations, that we can operate from that logic, reason, that ability to assess the consequences of things that are happening. And those connections just aren't all in place yet. But as parents, caregivers, adults supporting young people, we can kind of operate as their frontal lobe and help them gain some insight into the choices that they're making, so that they can start to create these patterns and have access to healthier decision making. A couple of other things. There are more regions of the brain to resist temptation in adults than there are in young people. So the regions of the brain that help an adult to resist a temptation, there's more of them in play that are supporting an adult. And there's also, it takes more regions for a teenager than an adult to resist a temptation or to steer clear of a more dangerous behavior. So they're having to work really hard. And we want to acknowledge when a young person or a teenager makes a choice that is just spot on, let's do some reinforcing of that. And again, help them have some of that dopamine released for something they did that was really successful in hopes that they will dial in that type of choice again in the future. So the chief predictor of adolescent behavior is not their assessment of risk. Surprise, surprise. The chief predictor of adolescent behavior is their anticipation of reward. They are reward hunters. And so sometimes when a certain thing plays out and we are all going, what in the world were you thinking? They weren't thinking. That is why the brain wasn't really supporting them in that moment. And that doesn't mean we drop all expectations or we just erase all the rules. We still got to come in with some consistency and some regular conversations. And that's going to be really key in helping them to understand what's going on with their brain. Teenagers, for the most part, my experience in sharing brain research with teenagers is so positive. It actually is comforting to them and assuring to them. They themselves don't understand why things are happening the way they're happening. And so they really appreciate to know that there is science and neuroscience explaining what's happening for them. We'll talk a lot about how teenagers have these raging hormones. And from my understanding, and I am not a neuroscientist, but I've read a few good books on this topic. From my understanding, it's not necessarily that teenagers are having a whole lot more hormones going through their system than we are as adults, but it's happening for them for the first time and maybe not as regulated as they will become, as they might have experienced as their body matures. So for the first time, they're experiencing hormones that they just haven't had released in their system as they were younger children. But as young adults, they are starting to experience that. And that comes with a lot of highs and lows and surprising behavior choices, even to them. Even a young person who has had a day where it felt like they were at the top of the world and then crashed to a really low spot, they're really perplexed by that too. So this brain science can really help them understand that there's legit things going on, and we don't just need to dismiss it and say, oh, well, you're a teenager, and not validate their experience. They're having a very real experience, and brain research is really helping us understand what that experience is. A quick tip regarding some of this research, that what we know about the teenage brain, is that a young person is going to do a lot better academically if they have a designated area to do their studying and their homework. That's going to be a big win. So something that really supports this neuroscience of the brain is that it's able to acknowledge and recognize a learning space. And if we can create that space and help the young person use that space to support them in their learning, that can be really beneficial. We also know that reviewing materials right before we go to bed also helps imprint that memory and that recall. Now, that does not mean studying for the first time right before, the night before. That's not what we're talking about. But if we've had some studying of materials on a regular basis and we've used our notes in a helpful way to review them the night before a test, that's a big win. That's gonna, or even just in the evenings regularly. The brain research shows that does really support learning in a stronger way. We also know some things about energy drinks. Energy drinks are responsible for a lot of complications for young people. Energy drinks do not support healthy brain development and can contribute to things like insomnia, headaches, abdominal pain, anxiety, high blood pressure, restlessness, vomiting, even seizures, breathing troubles, heart issues, chest pain, dehydration, dental erosion, and irritability. So our awareness of this and what we know about the brain and just young people development in general, the energy drinks are kind of bumping heads with healthy development. And we could go into recreational drugs and alcohol and find all kinds of other things that are supporting, but that's a really challenging thing to introduce. You just can't introduce those things in a successful way with a young person. The outcomes are going to to cause some challenges for that healthy development. So anything that a young person is learning, good or bad, is going to stimulate that dopamine, and that is going to be perceived as a reward. And when there's perception of something being a reward, then it becomes a learned behavior. So we want to be sure that we are supporting young people in gaining learned behaviors that really do put them on a trajectory for success. And one of the ways we do that is by pointing out things they're doing right. So it's easy to come into a room and or watch or observe something that they're experiencing and point out all the things that they're not doing right. And to some degree, there might be helpful ways to do that and important ways to do that. But if we've observed a young person handling themselves with self-control and with respect for themselves and respect for others, and we're able to acknowledge that successful behavior, then they're going to have a dopamine reward for that, and they're going to learn that new way of operating, and that's going to be a win for them. In the classes that are coming up, we have another one of these parenting classes in October. It is free. I believe it's the first Tuesday of October, but I'm not positive. I need to check that. I will make that information available. If you scroll down through the Counselor Lady page, then there's a flyer that indicates the dates of these free classes. We are going to be talking about the whole brain child, and we're going to be talking about ways to improve relationships with young people and their parents, with them and their siblings. We're going to be talking about how we can set some healthy parameters regarding screen time. So our next topic, okay, I know the date. It is October 3rd, and we are going to be again covering the brain, and it's going to be parenting with the brain in mind. Some of the other topics will include connecting, building connections with the young people we work with, how and when we should engage and not enrage. So we want to work on engagement versus enragement. The use the remote of the mind, so just like the remote control, how we can become more aware with insight of what's going on in our own minds and how we have some charge over that. We're going to learn some strategies of helping young people manage some strong emotions and increasing the family fun factor and connection through conflict. So the main two books we will be using are going to be that one I already showed you, The Teenage Brain, Fascinating Neuroscience on the Teenage Brain by Frances E. Jensen, and then The Whole Brain Child Workbook. And even though it says child, this course is more geared towards people raising teenagers, but it's applicable for that group as well. We'll kind of dial it in. And this is the workbook. If you're able to get this, that would be great. If you live in southern Navajo County and you would like one of these workbooks, reach out to me on my Counselor Lady page, and I will see if I can get an order in for them. We are so glad to be working on the Blue Cross Blue Shield grant, which is, our project name is Not All Wounds Are Visible, and Not All Wounds Are Visible, Educating on Mental Health. So appreciative that we were able to get that grant. Our partnership is with myself, Becky Montoya Wright, the Nexus Coalition, and then these parenting classes are in effort with a community partnership with Blue Ridge Schools. But we want to definitely serve as much as we can southern Navajo County. Of course, anyone who wants to tune in and get some little insights, that would be great. But we really want the people in southern Navajo County to be hearing from other people in southern Navajo County and sharing the things that are working for them, the challenges that we're having. Young people have a lot going on, and there are lots of ways that we can support them. One of the best ways is understanding how they're taking information in and what that's allowing them to do moving forward. So to those who were able to come today, that was great. To those who weren't, hopefully this little summary gives you a foothold on where we're at with this and how we'll be moving forward. Have a good one.